we've had a long, stressful week at work, and we just would like some peace and quiet. But over a length of time, right, like that might be due to signs, symptoms of a depression and feeling helpless or hopeless about a situation. Being able to be self-aware enough to say like, hey, I see a change, and okay, it's not just a today thing. Okay, I've been able to track some of these changes over time. My sleep is looking a little bit differently. My appetite is changing. I'm not responding to any of my text messages. I'm not doing the hobbies that I enjoy doing. Like, those are all the things that we have to be able to identify and have the level of emotional intelligence, self-awareness to not only identify for ourselves, but if someone else, like a loved one, a spouse, a family member, sees some of those things, being open enough to understand that they might also have a pretty good lens as to what's going on and what looks differently.
Welcome to Female Voices, Life and Loss, a podcast dedicated to women from all walks of life. Whether you're navigating through loss, seeking growth, or simply looking for a place to feel understood, you've come to the right space. Each week, we provide compassionate guidance, share diverse stories, and offer practical advice to help you heal, grow, and thrive. No matter where you are on your journey, we're here to walk with you. Let's grow together. Okay, so today on Female Voices, Life and Loss, we're honored to welcome a powerful voice in the world of mental health advocacy and grief support, Derrick Howell. Derrick is a licensed clinical social worker with a passion for elevating mental wellness in often overlooked communities, especially among men and student athletes. He holds a bachelor's degree in social work from the Methodist University and a master's degree from the prestigious Howard University. Derrick is not only a practicing clinician here in Missouri, but he also serves as the current president of the National Association of Social Workers, the Missouri chapter. He's a proud member of both that chapter and the Alliance of Social Workers in Sports, where he helps bridge the gap between high performance and emotional well-being. Today, Derrick is here to help us explore a topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention: how to support fathers and how to better show up for the men in our lives who are grieving. His insight, compassion, and leadership are a gift to this conversation. And to all who are listening, thank you so much, Derrick.
Thank you both for having me.
Great. I know Teresa always starts with this whole thing, like, who are you? That's how she starts.
I do always start it that way.
Yeah, so Derrick,
titles and no titles. Who is Derrick?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll make one update to the bio. So I'm the former president of the NASW Missouri chapter. So I'm no longer serving as the president anymore. My term ended last July. Who am I? I guess we'll start from the professional, the accolades and the credentials and all those things, right? So yeah, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I also hold my MBA as well. So really interested in just merging that gap between individuals who need the resources, but then also like procuring the resources and understanding a little bit more of like how can we obtain services for marginalized individuals and communities. So some of that kind of led me to also doing some work with like local, state organizations and also national organizations. But just at the bare root of it, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm also a believer. So I think that background in athletics also just makes me the person who continues to find challenges and also take on new challenges and, find ways to overcome. So it's a little bit about myself.
Nice. I know you said wife. How long have you been married? How old is your child?
Yeah, so I have a 5-year-old and I've been married just over a year now.
Nice.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kindergarten coming.
Yeah, it is coming fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much fun stuff, though. Okay, got a question. Let's see. From your lens as a clinician, how can we reframe grief support so that men feel safe and invited into the healing process?
I think that one of the main ways that we can allow men to feel safe is to listen. Having that non-judgmental, reflective ear sometimes is one of the most important things, I believe, to not only have men enter the room, enter these conversations, but also to stay, to continue to come back. So we know there's a difference between hearing someone and also listening to someone, right? So the audible noise of the words, right, and hearing it, but then just not always having to have a response to when someone says something or when someone doesn't say a lot, or in one's perspective might not be enough to fully answer a question, right? But it may be what they have to give in that moment. And I think, as a clinician, I think just meeting people where they are at is one of the most important things that we can do to create that safe environment.
I think you mentioned me like 3 times in there, just with the conversation I have with my husband. Like, all you got, that's it.
Right.
More than that.
Yeah.
So I felt I could listen a little bit better.
We all. That's everyone.
Yeah.
That's
work
everyone.
in progress.
Yeah. When you said that, I was curious because I mostly work with women. But if I was to work with men or couples, your opinion on this, do men do better one-on-one or group settings? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's difficult to answer better. I think that I've had various experiences because you're asking if men will be willing to participate. Is that what you mean by better?
Yeah. Do men open up enough for others to listen if they're in a group setting, or are they more one-on-one better that way? I think women have a tendency to want to gravitate more towards groups at times so that they feel connected to others, where I wasn't sure with men because I don't work with men, so I was just curious if they are better. I would imagine one-on-one, but I don't know that for a fact. That's why I'm asking the question.
Okay. Yeah. No, absolutely. No, it's a great question too. I think it varies because each individual is different, but also I think we as humans, so regardless of gender identity, we all thrive in human interactions, and we all can enjoy a sense of community. So, I've tailored my individual practice to working with men specifically, and so I've seen firsthand those individuals who come in maybe unwilling to talk or may have come in for different reasons, right? Maybe they had a different level of motivation to come, and then over time, once that one-on-one relationship has been built, that's when we see a lot of growth, a lot of change, and conversations beginning to develop, and a lot more back and forth conversation than day one. But also in that group setting, I've also seen a lot of individuals progress too, because there's that sense of shared identity of like, hey, we're kind of in this together. I've went through something similar, or I've never went through that, and I'm glad I heard it from you, so I don't ever have to go through that. But I've also can relate because I've have my own experiences. So yeah, I've seen a little bit of both, and I think you also mentioned in that question couples. I think similar response as to depends a lot. A lot goes into couples because of dynamic in relationships.
Yeah. Man. Got a lot of questions here. I'm just going to throw them out.
do it. Let's do it.
Why do you think grief is still a taboo topic for many men? And second part, how do we begin to break down that stigma, especially in faith, family, and in sports communities?
Okay. I think the first hand, why is it still taboo? Why is there still stigma in talking about grief? I mean, one of the larger reasons because it is difficult to talk about our vulnerabilities, right? Kind of liken it to like showing someone the areas of the chinks in the armor, so to speak, right? It's like if I kind of show you or if I reveal these things to you, you now have an opportunity to either use it against me or I may have to undo a healing wound, and now it's back open, and now I have to deal with whatever consequences or repercussions come with reopening a wound. You know, maybe some people aren't ready to talk with, or process those feelings at a particular time. So I think that's why it's still that stigma. Yeah, just being vulnerable and not knowing when things will resurface because we've started talking about them again can be very scary.
So true.
And then the second part being, what can we do? Right? Is that the question?
Yeah. How do we break down that stigma in faith, family, and sports in those communities?
Got it. Yeah, I think breaking down the stigma comes from us being honest with one another. Sometimes I think just a honest response and statement is, there's something that I have on my mind, I'm processing, and I just don't feel quite comfortable to go into great details right now. And to the point I was making earlier, allowing that to be okay for the moment, right? Like we don't want to stay there. We don't want to stay in a place of the answer is I'm processing, and we're not actually processing. We're just avoiding. But I think that is part of it. It's allowing us to be honest in the sense that we do have feelings, and sometimes processing and dealing with grief and coping looks very different, but we also know that it's going to also come with a time frame that's going to be unique for each individual. So I think breaking down the stigma comes from us being honest with each other about those feelings, right? The good ones and the ones we sometimes don't want to feel as open, and then also being open to receiving help and support as well. I think that becomes a huge one. It's like we break it down by opening up, being honest, but then also reaching out and supporting one another and getting that support too.
Do you feel that men, it's hard for them to receive that support in that kind of way?
You know, I think it can be. I think that we get support. So if we're talking about relating this back to athletes and men who may form community in other spaces, like we used to being on teams. We know how to get support, right? We know sometimes it might come as tough love or a little back and forth banter, but it also could just be simply like sitting in silence and just like, hey, I'm here for you. I hear you. I got your back. So I don't know if it's hard. I think that we're talking about now grief and loss, that also creates a unique layer, because we deal with loss in those areas as well. Like if you lose a game, if you lose a teammate to an injury, like that's also loss and grief, and role adjustments, and all those things come with it the alike. So I think we know what it looks like, but it could become a different level when we're talking about more permanent losses as well.
Can you speak to the importance of emotional intelligence or emotional literacy in men, especially when it comes to identifying grief responses that at times may look like anger or silence or kind of withdrawing?
Yeah, so emotional intelligence is extremely important. Being able to be self-aware. I mean, oftentimes we're not expecting anyone to self-diagnose, right? Like we don't want that to happen, but also everyone doesn't have a background or expertise in mental health. So sometimes those warning signs aren't as common knowledge, right? Sometimes us isolating may just be because we've had a long stressful week at work and we just would like some peace and quiet. But over a length of time, right, like that might be due to signs, symptoms of a depression and feeling helpless or hopeless about a situation. Being able to be self-aware enough to say like, hey, I see a change, and okay, it's not just a today thing. Okay, I've been able to track some of these changes over time. My sleep is looking a little bit differently. My appetite is changing. I'm not responding to any of my text messages. I'm not doing the hobbies that I enjoy doing. Like those are all the things that we have to be able to identify and have the level of emotional intelligence, self-awareness to not only identify for ourselves, but if someone else, like a loved one, a spouse, a family member, sees some of those things, being open enough to understand that they might also have a pretty good lens as to what's going on and what looks differently.
I love that, because I think that's so helpful for the listeners that are listening to know that those are signs of there could be something to be addressed. Returning texts and eating and sleeping and all of those things. So I'm glad that you brought those up. And I wanted to just reiterate that for the listeners. So if you see this, and this could probably be both male and female, but we're talking about males at this point, to make sure that you have them seek help or just start asking more questions to see if you can support them in some way is what I would say. But yeah, it was good.
And just thinking about, Father's Day and fathers who have or grieving a loss of a child that they lost, whether it's through the physical health, medical health, just all the different ways we lose people. And just personally thinking of my own husband and my own stepdad who was in the military, lost friends overseas and those kind of things. And then just my husband, me and him losing our child, just thinking of ways where women can be more intentional around supporting them on those important dates like Father's Day or bereaved Father's Day, or even later when we were talking, me and Teresa were talking about Veterans Day and things like that. Just how can we provide more support for them? Because women think differently, we think completely opposite.
Yeah, that would be great if you could elaborate on that. How do we support them?
No, that's a great question. I think instantly my mind went to love languages and how we communicate differently regarding what it is that we need, what it is that we want, right? So the example that popped in my mind was gifts and acts of service, right? Sometimes men do not want gifts, right? Some do, right? So it varies, right? But I know
mine. He's
and a lot of women in my life, they enjoy a good gift, right? They enjoy a good gift. But so if like myself or other men, we may appreciate acts of service, right? So if we're dealing with a time that is a memorial or a holiday, or just a time where grief is pertinent, like an act of service might be something that is felt in a very different way. So that could look like maybe it's booking a massage, or doing something around the house that can just show them like, hey, I was thinking about you. And if there's no pressure to do something grand today or do something with other people, like maybe the individual just wants to be home, kind of like in their space of solitude. But like a gift basket or an act of service, something can go a long way, just because they may receive that as like, hey, I have no pressure, there's no guilt if I don't want to do something because I'm feeling these feelings like very strongly. But hey, I'm so grateful that you did this for me and that you showed that you were thinking of me in this way.
Love that.
I love the love language, and I think we all probably need to think about each other's love language as we support each other. Because I know talking to my husband, oftentimes he's like, I don't know,
Yep.
what do you want to do today?
Yep.
You can go either way, So it's hard to understand the communication. Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, and I know that's a free kind of thing you can do, because I've done that before. It's been a while. I'll have to pull mine back out again, mine and my husband's. But I think, is that still like you just research that and the test is free and stuff? Do you guys know?
Yeah, it's free.
Yeah. So anyone's listening, just do that questionnaire, 5 love languages. It's a great tool and great information for the listeners. Like, if you're not sure, and that would be, like you were saying, Derrick, the first thing is, what is their love language?
Yeah.
What would they want on those days? First and foremost,
exactly.
Go to that. And so I like that. Yeah, great tool.
Yeah. My husband's physical touch and affirmation. So I feel like that could be a bulk of the men that I know. Tell me I'm the man, give me a hug, kiss my head, whatever.
I think physical touch for most men is number 1.
All my, organically.
Yep.
My husband, that's number 1, but affirmations is not. I'm trying to think what number 2 is for. But
definitely tell me I'm the man.
Is it acts of service?
Yeah. And give me
acts of service for him.
Okay.
So, okay. More questions.
All right, let's do it.
Unless Teresa has one. I want to take over.
What do you got?
All right, rolling. Keep rolling. Okay. How can friends and partners or coworkers recognize when a grieving man needs more than just time, but professional help or intervention? And you spoke to that already about just noticing if sleep is being impacted, or you don't see them stepping out and being as social. Are there any other things that we can kind of keep our eye on?
I think those ones were good. I mean, I think if we add in the caveat of employers and work performance, if work performance begins to change, or if mood at work or communication begins to change, I think those are, necessary times to maybe not intervene, but to offer support. Because I think that it could go in very different ways, because we are removed from like the aspect of like the social and personal when it comes to work a lot of times, because we see each other for a few hours, and then, who knows what it looks like when you're home, or, if your mood begins to change. So I think it's an appropriate time to maybe just ask, how the person is doing, right? That can kind of maybe open up a door for a conversation. And then that's where, those additional resources may be offered. Like, hey, maybe you want to reach out and get some EAP, or, maybe you want to follow up and do some other things that could be helpful for your, overall well-being. So just being observant, I think is important.
And Teresa, Derrick does a really good job at this at work. Like, he's one of those guys that he's very intentional with each staff member of checking in, and how are you, and really waiting for the answer. He does that very, very well, and then just making sure everybody feels seen. I think that is a gift he has that he brings to our office.
That's awesome.
So definitely practicing that more myself. Not there fully, because I've been married for 10 years and he's on it. So I definitely can take some of those cues and be more intentional with watching and listening for ways that I can support someone else.
Well, I think just as a society, we're fast paced, and it doesn't take that long of a time period to just pause and wait for someone's response. Guilty of not doing that. More so as a grief specialist, I feel like I do that well. But in other spaces, not so much. In fact, just was doing graduation party, and I had a friend I hadn't seen in a long time. But I'm in a space now, and I wanted to hear all that was going on with them, but I'm also in a space where it's like, okay, there's an empty pizza box. Like, people are going through the line, getting pizza and getting food. And I have a tendency, it's from when I was young and being a woman, like, okay, hold that thought. I got to go take care of this. And I need to be better at, no, let somebody, that person going through the line can move that pizza. But I'm so much of tending to other people's needs, especially feeding them. And I'm sure that comes from my mother and a big family. Because we're talking about this, I know I need to be more intentional. Like when someone's in a conversation, no matter where I'm at, to be intentional and totally present. And that jumped in my mind when you talked about that, because when I left there, my husband said, hey, did you hear they're going to have another grandchild? And I'm like, shoot, no, I didn't, because I was moving the pizza box. And I'm like, dang it. Reminder again.
Yeah, I definitely know I fall into that same category as Teresa. Just, you're just taking care of everybody. I need to check all these boxes. And a lot of times, that's not what, everybody needs at that moment.
Yeah. So thanks for the reminder, Derrick, too.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Okay, next question. What are your thoughts on how grief affects young male athletes and what supports are missing in that space?
I think it impacts male athletes due to the fact that, there's a lot of competition, right? It can be healthy competition as well, but just in athletics, the less reps you get, the more time you miss at practice, it impacts your position on the depth chart. So, if you have a loss, hopefully you have a supportive team, environment, coaching staff that understands that sometimes people cannot be a part of a game, a practice, and that should not impact their ability to, show up the very next time that they can, right? And being able to take as many days or as much time as needed should not be held against them. And I say that as someone who also understands that, the show keeps moving, so to speak, right? Like where the time isn't stopping, right? So I think what we can do is have more supportive culture. But I think that is a challenge, is that if I miss this moment to go attend a memorial service or a funeral, then my spot is not going to be able to be earned back. I think that misnomer is something that, a lot of younger athletes may have, just because we know that there is definitely some truth in it, but it's based on the culture that's created. So I think if we begin to change culture, that could be helpful. Also, some support groups would also be great. Now, a lot of teams have this, but if we're talking about specifically young athletes, understanding how important mental fitness is, mental health, mental well-being is, resiliency, all those things. A lot of athletes, high school level or younger, don't have access to those readily. You have to seek those things out. A lot of times there also comes with an associated cost of getting those individual experts in your corner, in your team, or a sports psychologist. Like, those things are not usually just given to younger athletes.
And knowing that, and thinking with us being parents and Teresa a grandparent, what are ways that we can support, kind of fill in some of the gaps for this population?
Yeah, I think one of those things is showing by modeling the importance of taking care of yourself. It's something that young children, as we know, pick up on, right? Like, okay, Teresa, you were just bringing up an example, like, okay, maybe I got this from my mom. Like, maybe I've noticed this, and now I'm seeing how it it shows up in my adult life. And so modeling, hey, it's okay to have a day where I rest. I'm not doing anything or taking care of maybe anyone else, or I'm not doing anything that is maybe deemed productive, but I'm just taking myself a day to rest, recover, rejuvenate, and to respond to tomorrow's challenges. I think that is something that is super important that we can be doing, but also mental health, being able to have those conversations sort of baked into life, right? It's not, hey, let's wait till something happens and now we're going to seek out the services, the experts, the professionals. But what would a world be if we were to just have a more preventative and proactive approach where we talk about how you're feeling each and every day, and while things are going well, we're talking about it and checking in. That also speaks to having these opportunities to know what the identifiers are when things are good, and knowing what that baseline looks like. But then also when things begin to change, it's a little bit easier for parents and caregivers and partners and spouses to identify those changes in their children. So I think if we model that behavior, we would definitely set the next generation up for success.
That sounded like a lot of self-care.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We talk a lot about self-care. Almost every episode, there's some sort of self-care, and so that's what that exactly sounded like. That it's important to make sure that we're always giving ourselves self-care and self-love, and it should not, like you said, it's not something that we should just think of doing every once in a while. It should be almost a daily thing that we're doing that. For sure. I love that.
It's hard though when the culture is running at the speed of light. So everything you just said, Derrick, I reminded another parent, like, hey, you're showing your kids how to take care of yourself when they grow up.
Absolutely.
So I think I got her to agree that Sunday could be the one day that she did nothing.
Okay.
Because I couldn't get her to do it every day. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
We do one thing to take care of ourselves each week. So that's what we landed on. And so last question, how do race, culture, and identity intersect with male grief, and what should be aware of when offering culturally responsive care? So just thinking about different cultures, race, their identity, how does all this intersect with how men experience grief?
Yeah, so I think to answer the question, I'll start by saying when I was mentioning that certain younger athletes may not have access to certain, we'll say, services, right? I don't even want to say additional services, because I think all young athletes should be understanding what mental health and how mental fitness comes into the whole athlete model. But I think in the same breath, thinking about individuals who come from marginalized communities, who are maybe displaced or maybe have broken families, broken homes, and we know that impacts all races. So having that understanding, you may not have a individual who has the means or understands that, okay, if I go to this place, right, to get a referral, I can get counseling for free, right? And so sometimes it's about community and access to the information, right? Let alone access to the resources, because oftentimes the resources are everywhere, but that lack of information and how to access resources can show up and kind of create that gap when we're talking about different races getting services. And then just to add to that, I think the other part of your question was like the cultural specific care, right? So I think it's important too to have individuals who you feel like you can trust, feel like you can connect with. And sometimes that might be gender. It could also be cultural identity, could be race, those different things. So having a male, they may say, okay, well, I don't want to talk to a woman about this conversation or topic because like maybe I was hurt by a woman in the past, right? Like we don't know sometimes what people go through before they seek out someone for support. So maybe that individual will be better served starting with a male who
Mhm.
they may identify with. And then I think the same thing might be said for, race or cultural identity, where someone may have a similar background. Because I think it's important to say sometimes we look up the individuals that we're seeking out, right? Like in the same way we may look up our doctor or our dentist before, just like, let me figure out a little bit more about you, right? That identity tie may be like, hey, you grew up in a place that was 20 minutes away from me, or hey, you have a similar background, like you also went to school in this area, or you also play sports. So I think like those different ways that we identify ourselves is the reason why we are able to build connections and relationships, and why people may feel better suited to work with someone than someone else.
So true. It's hard to know sometimes what to connect someone to a therapist, because I know I meet different people and I'm like, how did you find me?
Yeah.
They're like 4 hours away and I'm like,
Yeah. Yep.
okay.
Yep.
So it's interesting to know what landed, on them and what
Mhm.
created that space of connection. So it's interesting. Wrapping up, because we're gonna have Derrick back again as we talk about ways to help bereaved fathers. But Derrick, are there anything that you want to leave our audience with, some takeaways of how us as women can show up and support the men in our lives?
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you both for bringing me on. Speak a little bit about some of the things that I know. I would say that in closing, some final words would be just like I said earlier, just be a willing listener. I think it goes a long way to support men. If we don't feel like we have a platform to speak, that's when you notice what oftentimes is said is that men don't talk enough, you're not sharing enough. So I think it just kind of reiterates that cycle and pattern. So if we want to be people who break these cycles and patterns, we have to show up in ways that might be a little bit more challenging for us as well. So I think that's the last thing I'll leave to your audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
next time we'll be talking to Derrick again. More to come.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Female Voices Life and Loss. We hope today's conversation brought you comfort, insight, and a sense of community. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with others who might need it. Stay connected, stay resilient, and until next time, keep growing and healing.